everybody. So, okay, hello and welcome everybody to Show and Tell, The Art of Change Part 2. We had a very, very interesting conversation last week and have heard from a variety of backgrounds. We did it chronological. So we started kind of way back with Julia Roach, who insists it's nothing to do with her age, it's just the area that she's interested in. And we've traveled through the 60s to the mid-century, and we're going to pick up again today. I think next on the list is 1968 with Roger Roach. So I think without further ado, I would like to hand over to Roger, who we're looking forward to hearing about.
Okie doke, just bear with me a second.
And what I'll do is I'll spotlight you so that you stay on screen. So I'll do that.
Okay, have you got that?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've got one up, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, here I am. It's the spring of 1968 and I'm 180 miles from home, standing in the Tate Gallery, London, the scene of my epiphany. Well, being a person who does believe in doing things by half, my epiphany light. But first, how did I come to be there? Art education in my school wasn't exactly up there. My art teacher, like several other masters at the time, were World War II veterans. He had been on the Baltic convoys and was definitely not to be trifled with. Lessons followed a 3-week cycle. In week 1, the teacher gave us our latest subject. And then he disappeared into his office to write his column for the local newspaper, the Pontrhydyfen Gazette. He wasn't usually seen again until week 3, when the work would be marked. He was, however, heard occasionally. "Get on with your work," would admit from his sanctum, and all hell would pay if the class gave him cause to emerge any sooner than was necessary. When I reached the 6th form, things improved marginally, when a thick exercise book of projects appeared for me to work my way through, along with a massive tome covering French painting from Watteau to David. God knows who had written it, but I diligently copied it out and read it until I knew it sufficiently well off by heart to later enable me to limp through my A-level. However, the art of the courts of Louis XIV and XV didn't resonate with my life in a Welsh industrial village, and it was some decades later that I finally got it. There were, of course, no visits to art galleries or mention of anything modern. Contemporary art remained a mystery to me. At home, cultural television shows were shouldered out of the way by the likes of Take Your Pick and Double Your Money, and the news of the world definitely didn't have an arts page, except when Yves Klein chose to drag paint-soaked naked models across his canvases. I did, however, know that it was out there, somewhere, along with drugs and sex, and somehow, in 1968, news filtered through to my village that there was a Roy Lichtenstein exhibition taking place in London. Somewhere I had only ever visited once before with my parents, when my father went to collect a prize after winning a competition in the aforementioned News of the World. There was only one thing for it. A friend and I decided to hitchhike to the capital, which was quite an undertaking with no motorway links at the time. We eventually arrived as night was falling, with little money and nowhere to stay. We attempted to sleep in, first, Trafalgar Square, quite unaware that it had been the scene of mass rough sleeping in years gone by, and later at Paddington Station. But we were inevitably moved on by the boys in blue at the first and the marauding destitutes at the second. We passed the hours visiting seedy all-night cafes and walking the streets until the gallery finally opened the following morning. By then, I was in quite a state, suffering from a lack of both sleep and food, a quite grubby somnambulist. I was vaguely aware of the marbled grandness of the Tate, but I wasn't prepared for the road to Damascus moment that was to come. There were no burning bushes either, but instead a huge, predominantly white painting dominating the room I'd stumbled into. The size of it, its modernism, its benday dots, and its brightness overawed me. Here was art I could relate to. Here were the plastic construction kits I had made only a few years earlier, an American F-86 Sabre fighter doing battle with a Russian MiG-15 in the skies over Korea, and all in one of the most prestigious galleries in the land. The image was just like a magnificently large reincarnation of the American DC comics I had grown up with. And as I was later to discover, that's exactly what it was. The painting was barely 5 years old at the time and had been brought by the Tate from the Leo Costelli Gallery 2 years earlier. Its newness was cathartic. Art did not have to exist in the past tense. Art could be young, vibrant, and relevant to me. And maybe, just maybe, I could make it too. I was, of course, quite unaware that I had visited the first pop art exhibition to be held at the Tate, an exhibition that attracted a new type of audience to the gallery, prompting the then Sunday Times critic John Russell to rather snootily observe, "To see some of them marching through the entrance hall, looking neither to the left nor to the right, you would think that all older art was contaminated." To be fair to the critic, that probably was just how I did feel leaving the exhibition, and for quite some time afterwards, as that gloriously creative decade tailed off. Okay, that's me.
Very good, mate. Very good.
That's wonderful, Roger. Anybody want to say something to Roger about that? I really like that last sentence, actually. That's great.
Was it Tate Modern?
No, Tate Modern didn't exist then. There was only the Tate on Millbank. It was just the Tate, which is now Tate Britain. But that had to function for all the Tates then. That was the only one.
I venture to say, if you'd walked into Tate Modern, you would have probably been passed out, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah, it'd been Balzac syndrome, the collapse, definitely.
Both I'd just reflect that if it's the art of change, it sounds like a massive change in the art world coincided with a massive change in your journey through art, really. Like it feels like those two things came together.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me when I said last week that they call me the old mistress because I'm so obsessed with old masters. That Roger and I ever got together when I listened to that again. But I think we were good for one another, introducing one another to things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
I think what it is, it's just the shock of the new, really, isn't it? I think that's, the book that came out, The Shock of the New, it impacted on all of us, really. Anybody who was involved in the art world at that time. It was just a brilliant time, it was so exciting. All of a sudden, what we were interested in became, kind of really hip or really kind of fashionable, really, really dynamic all of a sudden. And I love old work, I love looking at old paintings, but still, I think we're still absorbing a lot of the stuff from the 60s and 70s, even now. I don't know, the work seems more seminal somehow, whereas now we tend to just kind of play at it a little bit in a very commercial, small-scale way. So we've lost a bit of that big thinking, I think. And, it's just that shock of the new, which I think we can all relate to. Anybody who's lived, in the art world can relate exactly to what Roger's talking about. And that is, it was a massive, change of approach and vision, dynamism, which was just so exciting. So I thought it was brilliant.
It seems as though it really opened up a new audience, isn't it? Because I think, that last statement by the critic, that those people coming into this kind of hollowed grounds. And it feels like as well, it was a moment where kind of how art institutions are perceived and who they are for, because obviously, there was this idea that it's an elite, you're only allowed in if you're kind of probably of a certain background, of a certain education. But it feels like there was a moment where that changed, isn't it? And it's kind of, everybody's welcome. And there has been since a real drive to open up art to everybody. So it does seem, that sentence almost documented that moment and his indignation at it. I just, luckily something from the past, really, isn't it? So yeah, interesting.
And not just opening up audiences, but artists from working class backgrounds showing work in the Tate and maybe representing some of their culture that might have been different than the culture of someone who came from a higher class background. And I think a lot of that is post-war, really, because post-war opens up education and the opportunity for working class people to go to art school and to become part of what had been quite an exclusive culture, really.
John Bradby started to break that mold, didn't he? He was one of the bit earlier than pop art, but toilets and sinks and all that stuff.
Well, it goes along with the drama of the time as well. That Jane Caroline hasn't managed to make it, and because she'd known an awful lot about the theatre of that time, which brought so much change as well. When you said kitchen sink drama, what we were seeing on TV turned out to be quite different from what we'd seen before. The Wednesday play, I remember, was just like, exactly the same moment of...
Yeah, Ken Loach and He Come Home, all that stuff,
Last year, I celebrated my 50th year in the theatre as an actor, writer and director. And it's curious, the thing about class has just recently come up with Equity, of which I'm a member, and talking about working class actors getting more opportunity. And because I've come up with this class thing and experienced it all my life, I absolutely abhor the fact that we need to address sections of the community in a class way. It's absolutely awful about this. But I do remember in my early years in the theatre, I was a working class boy, and but a lot of actors who weren't from that working class, as we called it then, were describing themselves as working class because it was fashionable to be working class in the theatre. It was the thing to be, to say, oh, I've been dragged up in a dog-leg street, and and we only had bread and dripping and so on. It seems to be the thing to do. But it's about time we got shut of this. Our upper class, middle class, working class. It's about time it was put on the bonfire, in the bin, got rid of. We don't need it. We are people.
Well, there's an irony to the fact that women who went on the stage in the last were considered to be none too good. They were considered to be rather despicable kind of women who were lowlifes, and so what goes around comes around.
That is why they call themselves Mrs. and not Miss. Sarah Siddons was Mrs. Siddons, but she wasn't married.
And the stage door Johnnies.
Yeah, John, I think that's a really, really interesting point. You're raising. I do think we should move beyond class, and I'm having many conversations around that actually, because that, stretches across all spectrums and is often something that holds a society back in moving forward. Truly, if you kind of keep thinking in those categories, even if because they're not real as such, it's not a caste system, but it's still kind of very much everybody's still aware of it, and it feels almost we've moved away from it, but it's kind of swinging back a little bit. But without further ado, because we do have a tendency to talk a lot, I don't want to miss out on the next few presentations. So thank you very, very much, Roger. That was great. And next on the list, the year is 1971. And over to you, David.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
I still have problems with the microphone. Originally, I was just going to read this out, but given an extra week to plan it, I thought I might give you another slideshow. So I'll take the screen if that's okay. Oh, don't. Right, can you see that, everybody?
Yep.
Okay, right. I was certainly having a bit of a struggle with this at first, mainly because I thought to myself, well, does art really make much difference to people's lives? Can it really change the way people think, feel, or act? It was this thought in mind which had me trying to think of an artwork that might have had that kind of effect on me. I do realise, of course, that for many artists, seeing and interpreting works of art by others has often been a source of profound inspiration and enlightenment. That I can certainly understand. And I would certainly be lying if I said I hadn't felt moved and impressed by many different works of art over the years, whether it be a drawing, a painting, a photograph, film, music, literature, you name it. But actually changed by it, I wasn't really sure. I was thinking about this when I was watching Mark Kermode's TV series last week, The Secrets of Cinema. His subject that week was about cult movies. I was familiar with several of them as he was talking about them, and it brought back memories of where and when I'd seen them myself for the first time, which is very interesting. For instance, I remember seeing this lot. It was Kenneth Anger's Magic Lantern Cycle, which I saw when I was at college. I still have a ticket, so I can still remember that very well. It was quite a shocking piece of work, I remember at the time. Well, I did say to myself, well, what about a film that sort of impressed me all at the time, and not included, and this wasn't included in Mark's litany of cult classics. I think it meets his definition though, because he said to some extent that it's the audience that makes the film, it gives the film its cult status. And I tried to remember when I was a member of the audience for this film and what it meant to me at the time. Last week, I think I said something about trying to define the world we were born into and how that world shaped our lives as we were growing up. And I also went on to say that as we grew up ourselves and we met various circumstances and challenges, we ourselves would try to shape the world if we could. So here we are. This is the full glory of it. Easy Rider. I kind of almost associate seeing the film with starting to make choices for myself, having previously more or less accepted what others had decided for me. Sort of development we'll often associate with adolescence, I suppose. To echo the movie, I was beginning to wonder whether or not I wasn't born to follow. After all, seeing the film coincided with a break with my surroundings. Remained, as I remember, I just moved away from home to study at college. Oddly away because I actually saw the film at my local cinema in Leeds when I came home for a visit. It was at the Rex in Leeds, Beeston actually. And this is a picture of the Rex taken in 1938. The film that was showing on that particular occasion was The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. It was, by then the film was more or less a popular success, moving back from word of mouth to mainstream, I suppose. I even had to queue actually to get into the Rex cinema, which is something I'd never done before. It's surprising really because suburban cinemas were struggling to survive at that time. And like many others, the Rex closed down a few years later. Watching Easy Rider now, I have to say, I'm tempted to laugh. It's a lot of half-baked hippie nonsense, really. But naturally, it wasn't how I saw it at the time. Back then, it was the counterculture writ large, albeit mediated by Hollywood. As one of the tutors on my course had put it at the time, It tells you everything you need to know about America. I mean, how could I resist a film like that? As I recall, I just happened to be reading Norman Mailer's opus, An American Dream at the time, so that was added incentive. I won't try and critique the film. I'll leave that open for discussion if you want to. I'm guessing you may have all seen it at one time or another. You might have heard the soundtrack, which was so much part of the movie's mystique. I listened to the soundtrack well before I saw the movie. Suffice to say, it will always represent a time in my life when things were changing and I was changing. After seeing the film, I was determined to get a motorcycle, even if it was only a Honda 50, albeit I had to start somewhere. My mother wouldn't let me buy the Honda Sports model I'd set my sights on, but she said it would kill me. More importantly, I decided I would definitely be willing to take drugs when the need or opportunity arise. I didn't tell my mother that, of course. There's the bike. It's a beauty, isn't it? I wish I'd got it, but I don't. So anyway, I was going to say here that strangely, as I watch the film now, usually out of curiosity more than anything else, I have to say that the opening sequence still moves me. After a brief episode involving a drug deal, Phil Spector's cameo role in the film, we get a close-up of the bikes of Captain America as he fills his tank with dollar bills. And on the soundtrack, a clanging electric guitar turns into a psychedelic wail as we hear these words. I won't repeat it, you can just read it. Okay. A few years later, a book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert M. Pearson became a popular bestseller. There were claims at the time that reading it could change people's lives. As a dedicated motorcyclist by then, I tried to read it, but didn't get very far. In truth, it was my Haynes manual which was more use. That's the bike I had, the CZ 175. Well, I think that's more or less it, I think. Hope you enjoyed it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David. I've got a quick question. I've noticed that underneath the title, you've put it in Spanish. What was the reason?
Oh, yeah, well, I'll tell you. I was burning up on my Spanish vocabulary and thought, well, you know, I might as well sort of like just add subtitles just for a change.
Excellent, excellent. Do we have any Spanish speakers or Spanish?
Well,
It's great. I love it. We should do this all the time, you know, expand our vocabulary, and it makes us feel a bit closer to Europe. I appreciate the nod to the European dimension.
it helped my vocabulary because I knew words I didn't know.
Excellent. Great. Anybody else?
I think that trip scene in the cemetery, David, was that was revolutionary. First time I really seen a trip visualized, you know, in that way before. It kind of intrigued me, and I wanted to experience something like that. You know, so I think it drew a lot of people into that culture, that counterculture.
Yeah, well, you could say it glamorized it.
Well, it did, yeah. But I think the way it was filmed was kind of, you know, quite naturalistic in some respects. You know, I think it was very kind of, you know, very much like it is. You know.
As I remember, there used to be exploitation movies, Corman and people like that. And I think Peter Fonda did a movie earlier with him, and it was Trek, which was, well, comical to say the least. Now I think about it.
Funny you've chosen that film, David, because I happen to know that you've got a huge library of European films that are usually your go-to place. So it was quite interesting.
Yes, I mean, I know what you mean. I mean, I could have chosen Tarkovsky's Mirror because that had that kind of effect on me, or Orphy by Cocteau, which is another great film. But I thought, no, this has got to do with something about changing, about your life changing at the same time, not necessarily because you saw the film, because it was just emblematic of what you were going through at the time. It seemed, and it was part of popular culture, which I think we all were exposed to.
Well, America was starting to have such a huge influence on what we wanted and who we wanted to be, and even in girls' magazines, I think at that time, there was starting to be, and I always think it's rather a shame we didn't go more to European ideas than we went to American ideas, you know. And my parents were definitely enamored of a lot of American, you know, kind of the kitchens, the everything. It was all American.
Well, that's definitely true, but it was all part of our popular culture when we were growing up, just like as Roger said, about DC Comics and things like that, and Hollywood films that we were watching since we could watch films. So we couldn't dismiss it, and it just became a kind of part of our lives more than anything else, intrinsic almost.
It shows film there.
Yes, films, but also, as I say, comics and advertising, all those kind of things, newspapers, everything.
Well, like the artwork, it was done for a cohort of people that were young and hip and kind of, up and coming. All the romantic Hollywood films that were made were kind of more mature people acting very kind of conservative roles, and I think you just knew that excitement of the new, the shock of the new, and there's a brilliant thing that ties both things together where the Tate Modern now was a tagline on the front of the side of the gallery, and I think it says "free to enter, open to all," and I think that is such a brilliant statement to make in this day and age. It sums up everything really, free to enter, open to all, and I think that is we should all bear in mind with everything that we do creatively or whatever. Just keep it like that really, because that's such an important thing. Not to be making, to encourage the youth, encourage diversity. And I think that's just a brilliant thing, which makes me think of all these things that you're talking about during the post-war period.
It was that film was sort of responding to the sort of groundswell feeling, wasn't it? It was just out of an outlet. I was watching a fascinating documentary last night it was a documentary, it's a standalone film on Sky Arts, called 36 by 24. It was about film posters. And of course, it started off in a conventional way that it just traced the history of film posters. And then it suddenly, sort of about halfway through, took a massive change where the artist, in terms of the conventional painter, was replaced by basically photographs. And you had years of movie posters, which were basically just photographs of the main stars in it. But of course, what's happening now is that artists in America are producing their own posters for cult films like Psycho, things like that. And these things are just massive cult objects selling for thousands. So it becomes like it's generated a whole sort of genre of art. Rocky, they'll just do their own version, get it screen printed, and get it sold. And the turnover was sort of eye-watering. It is a really informative film, actually. It's on again next Tuesday morning at 1:40 if you're in the mood. In the morning.
That sounds good.
Oh, Caroline's here.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, everybody. I came late as ever. Had a complete meltdown when I couldn't get on. So anyway, here I am. I'm sorry I missed you, Dave. I saw a little bit at the end. It looked really intriguing. Anyway, have I missed Roger as well?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry.
It's being recorded, so you could always catch it up.
Yeah, I will.
Turn on your camera, your video.
Turn it on?
Yeah, because I can't see you.
Where? Oh, hang on.
Where it says video, picture, the bottom.
Is it on there?
Bottom of the screen.
Bottom of the screen, left-hand
I
side.
did it. I've pressed it. I pressed the plaster now. I'm so crap at this. Honestly, it gets me so stressed. Right, what's that? No, I'm pressing it like hell. There's a bell on the...
Picture of the camera. A video camera.
Not at the bottom. It's not. Where is it at the top?
It's at the bottom of the screen.
It's probably at the bottom. It says start video and it'll have a red line diagonally across it.
I can't see that anywhere.
Well, as you go down, it'll appear with your...
If you just touch the bottom of your screen.
I am. I'm doing it. I'm touching the bottom of my screen. What else can I do?
Move your finger up a bit, not the very bottom, just up a bit.
So it should appear then, the line of instructions of things you can do.
Is things at the top saying start video?
That'll do.
Yeah.
Keep top on mine. There you go. All right.
Hey!
Hey.
Hey!
I can never remember from one week to the next. That's how bad I am at this. I really apologise. Right, okay.
Hello, hi Caroline. I'm glad you can make it, so it's brilliant. So I just wanted to quickly see what year you were going to talk about because, oh, you're back anyway, so it doesn't matter when we'll introduce.
Yeah, way back, early 20th century actually.
That's it, excellent. Because at the moment we've just covered 1971 with David, and the next one up is going to be 1985, Chill. So maybe, Caroline, what we'll do is we'll go through to the end, to 2015, and then we'll have a nice little return to the early
100 years before nearly.
You know, and I like that period, so it's great. Good. Oh, excellent. Jill started. Brilliant.
Sorry.
With no further ado.
So sorry, I didn't mean
No,
to do
it's
that.
Good.
Okay. Right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Julia, are you sick of it?
Yeah, I can see it.
No, I mean, I feel sorry for you because I always choose things that I've maybe talked about at college. So they're always things you've maybe seen before, so I apologise.
Jill, you don't seriously think I can remember anything?
Okay, so so first of all, I'd like to say that I really agreed with what Graham was saying about open to everyone, and I've got a lovely quote that I use nearly all the time, that culture is our common property. So I just wanted to say that to reflect on what Graham had said. So when I was choosing my example, probably I've already talked about the examples that have changed me a lot, and that would be Duchamp, and I've talked about that enough maybe. And I've also talked a lot about physical public art pieces, they're often actually by male artists, and I've talked about house as well. So I feel like I didn't want to cover territory that I'd already kind of covered. So for me, this isn't a piece of work that changed me in an epiphany type scenario like Roger described, and maybe that was Duchamp for me. But I suppose I'm looking at art that can challenge and change the world maybe. So I'm looking at it more from that perspective. So this is a still photograph from a video of a performance that took place in 1985 in Brixton. And I actually saw this photograph in the Ferrens. So I saw the photograph rather than the performance. I saw it in the Ferrens. I can't remember what exhibition was, but it would have been quite a long time ago. And the photograph intrigued me, and so I followed it up and had a look at the artist and researched it that way. But it started in Hull for me. So it's a performance piece by an artist called Mona Hartoum, and it was part of a programme of public artwork and performance that, as I say, took place in Brixton. So it was a number of different artists over a period of time, I don't know, maybe a week, and each producing different performance type pieces, but out in the public space. So not in a gallery, but out on the streets. And it was called Roadworks, the collection of work altogether. And then obviously, don't need to state the obvious, but this was at a time shortly after the riots in the sort of early 1980s, when there was Brixton, I don't know, like Moss Side, like Toxteth, you know, like St Paul's in Bristol, was an area of you know, social and racial tension. Mona Hatoum herself was born in Lebanon, but her family are from Palestine, so she's Palestinian. And Palestinians were exiles in Lebanon after 1948, and she herself got stranded in Britain. So she'd come over to London, I'm not sure what for, maybe to study, maybe for an exhibition. War broke out in Lebanon, and she was effectively stranded or refugeed in London, and separated from her family. And a lot of her work is about that, conversations with her mother, and about dislocation and displacement. So I love Mona Hatoum's work. Like I really, really adore it, because she just takes ordinary everyday situations and slightly rearranges them, or slightly reorganizes them, to challenge us and to prompt us into thinking about things in a new way. So this is somebody walking along the street, but instead of wearing their boots, they're dragging their boots behind them. Their boots are attached to their ankles, and she's dragging them behind her. So it's an ordinary situation you'd come across every day, but just slightly rearranged, and that's indicative of a lot of her work. And I've got a little quote from her. She likes work where one has to reassess their assumptions and their relationship to things in the world. I also really love this piece of work because I like walking as art. Obviously I like objects and images. I've already talked about those, but I like the idea that walking is art. And we all know about lots of artists who've walked as an art event or an artistic expression, I guess, taken a walk. And it's like particular at the moment, isn't it, because of lockdown, and our walks take on special meaning. And this fits in with my current thoughts about public art, and I'm thinking about public art as the public's participation in public space. So particularly for someone like Mona Hatoum, you know, who could walk on those streets, who was free to walk safely on those streets. I'm so disappointed Julia can't remember, but this used to be an image that I would share with students in perhaps one of their first sessions with me, when we were like talking about interpreting things and what do they mean and how do you read images. And I love the fact that every year something new would come up. So somebody would say something new about it, and I'd think, how haven't I seen that before, and can I keep on discussing this image and still someone say something that makes me look at it in a new way. So, you know, this is about the powerful and the powerless. This is about everyone has something that drags them back, you know, that holds them back, that's tied to their ankles, but she is progressing forward. We can think about what the boots represent, whether it's the police or, I don't know, the National Front, or whether it's fashion, or, you know, there were always a good bag full of possibilities when people talked about this. And I just wanted to also say that, a bit like Graham's last week, he showed us some original images that might have been adverts, or like an advertisement for something, or a comic, and then how an artist, Paolozzi, had reworked that into an artwork, and then how, and I apologise Graham, I can't remember, but someone else took that 20 years later or so and represented it as another form of artwork. So one thing that I'd say about this is that, had you been in Brixton, you would have seen the whole thing. You would have seen the performance, you would have seen who it was, you would have seen where they were going, you would have seen the shops or the houses around. If you'd seen the film of it, the video, you would have been closer to it. But this still, which is how I came first across it, removes you from that situation. So this could well, it couldn't be anyone anywhere, but it is slightly more removed from its original situation, which was very site specific. And I think in some senses it means that we can all attach some meanings to it, you know. So for me, it's a very powerful piece. It was the first piece of work that I'd seen of Mona Hartomb's, and I've continued to love her work, you know, ever since. And then I'm going to go to another piece which Mona Hartomb's work takes me to. So this is a piece by an artist called Janine Antonio, and this is now in, I think it's in Barbados. I think is that right? I'm not sure. Sorry, I might have got that wrong. So this is Janine Antonio, and it's a piece that I mentally linked with Mona Hartomb's piece because it's about walking. And what Janine Antonio has done here, and this is a piece called Touch, is she's created a tightrope by connecting a rope between two trees. And then she's walking, and she actually does this. She's walking along it as a tightrope, as you would do in a circus, but from a particular angle. And she set it up so that if you view it and film it from a particular angle, it looks as though she's walking along the horizon. And how cool is that? Like this, when I saw this, I just thought it was the most beautiful thing ever. Like, I love the idea. I love the way she set that up. I love the way that she teeters when she walks, as she walks this line. I love, I mean, it's got other things in it. The fact that she is in New York, and I do apologise, I can't remember just offhand, but she's had to return to her homeland to take this. So this is about coming home and living in two places, that, you know, a bit like Mona Hartomb. So this is a piece that Mona Hartomb's piece took me to. So this is Janine Antonio, and excitingly, I've got permission to use it. I've just written to ask from some New York gallery. Well, we've got permission to use it in the Critical Fish, so I'm going to use it as a piece in Above Below at the Edge of the Water, which is a page that we're currently developing. So I was thinking it needs some writing to go with it. Oh God, but I might have to do the writing. So I was reading a bit into it, and then I found out that Janine Antonio had worked with Mona Hartomb, and they had created a conversation piece that went into a magazine. And I thought, oh, that's really nice that they actually met and worked in real life when I made that connection, you know, just in my own mind, and pieces of work that were powerful for me. So those are my pieces. They are about walking, they're women walking, and performance pieces rather than physical objects. And I think that's it.
Yeah, brilliant.
Just quickly say, I was being trite. I remember most of your lectures, I was just being trite about my leaning towards Alzheimer's, where I can't remember anything. I just think they're both marvellous images, and performance art has always had a real fascination for me.
Yeah, I just want to
and
say,
it's not photoshopped. She
walked it.
So fantastic. That.
So the actual artwork is a film installation, so, but that's just the still that you know that you would get maybe on her website, but the actual work is an installation of the film of her walking the tightrope. Yeah.
Yeah, Jill, I remember I think you sent me a link or put one on to watch that video.
Yeah.
And it is a really amazing piece of work. I wondered is it possible for you to put the link on to the Still Life group so we could all watch it afterwards?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely.
That'd be really.
Yeah.
It is just a really quite powerful piece. Very, very simple, like you say, but it's just the actual action of her walking, and you're sort of on bated breath, sort of see whether she's going to come off, and she doesn't. It's absolutely perfect, isn't it? It's brilliant, really good.
If anybody wants to watch it and share some thoughts with me, because I want to put it on the page, but so it needs some text with it, and I'm happy to write about it, but I don't necessarily want it to be my writing. So if anybody wanted to share their responses with me, and then I could kind of put that into the text, that would be amazing, because I suspect, you know, people's responses are going to be very different. So that if anyone wanted to do that, that would be fab.
Just sort of falling off the edge of the world feeling about it, isn't it? Where they, you know, when they used to set off on their boats, they thought when the world was flat and they were going to fall off the edge.
Yeah. Or that bit in oh God, what's that film with Jim Carrey where he's Truman Show, and he gets to the end, and that's the end of the world.
It seems to link with what you're doing in Critical Fish that I have been reading, and when we were talking about different levels of the underside and the overside of things, and it seems very connected what you're with your it's great. I don't remember you ever talking about that one.
No, that's a more recent find. When I found that, it linked in my mind to the Mona Hartoon one, but it's a recent. I think I've only known about that piece for the last 2 or 3 years, probably.
Jill, can I just show you? I've got a work by Mona Hartoon, actually. My wife has been to collect it for me upstairs. But this is a brilliant work called Tea for Two. It was done for breast cancer awareness.
Wow.
It's just a brilliant work. It was done for the Harewood Gallery in 2000. So that's a superb work.
Yeah.
A bit like the Fur Cup. It reminds me of that. And other things. Beautiful piece of work.
It's just adjusting. It's a little adjustment to everyday life, isn't it? That made you see everyday life completely differently.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're so used to doing it now, aren't we? We just totally accept that you can have somebody walking and really look at it as a piece of important stuff, imagery. I suppose I'm hit by the fact you're doing all this much more contemporary stuff, and I've gone back in my piece to something so completely amazing at the time. But they would have been, the people in 1913 that I was talking about, the audiences, would have looked at that and thought, what? You know, they couldn't have comprehended that anything was so banal in their view would be created or made to focus on. So it's lovely to see such a gap, actually, looking at this stuff and seeing what I'm trying to, you know, explain as well. But I mean, again, there are still people now, aren't there, who will not accept that stuff is worthy of any observation or time. You know, there are still people out there, aren't there? You hear it all the time, don't you? It's interesting. Yeah.
Well, I suppose when we talked earlier about elitism, I sometimes wonder about making art for artists, because sometimes the thinking and the ideas which have become so significant and important to art, the actual making of things. I mean, I tied trees up with sheets and my mother thought I'd lost my mind. And that was then, you know, when I was about 20. And I was making tents to cover trees in. And, you know, it's very difficult to get the message across when you're faced with what Roger was talking about before, how you grew up with the Daily Mirror. And all the kind of, it has any significance or importance, and that it does change lives, which I really believe art can do.
Absolutely. I remember when I first came to Hull, my very first art teaching job, which I didn't last long in, as you know, but I remember the bricks came out at the Tate, the bricks, you know, and I should never forget, as a really young art teacher, it's the very first job I'd ever had. And, you know, I remember fighting my corner in the staff room when people started to, you know, totally like abuse it really and just completely decry it. It wasn't even that I actually at the time believed it myself, but, you know, it wasn't my sort of thing anyway as an artist, but I had great respect for it, because I understood it in a way. I think I did in my way. Everybody's got their own version of understanding things, but I couldn't bear it that people just had this closed view, you know. Just seeing those cups again that you just showed us, those beautiful, that lovely double cup thing, that was wonderful. That's such a link. There's so many links in that, aren't there? There's so many layers on it that you can add. And as soon as you showed it, actually, as soon as he showed it, sorry, I thought of that fur cup as well. I thought, because we have so many, as our age, we've got so many layers of, you know, we don't realise how much knowledge we've taken in to ourselves, do we? And how much we can still, we can make links and connections. It's a different sort of mindset, isn't it?
I love the fact that when you expose people to things, suddenly they will see things, as you said, Jo, that you haven't seen. And you think, oh, how can I not have noticed that? And I would say that about work I was actually making. And somebody sitting behind me would say, oh, you know, and I'd go, oh.
It always is the beauty of sharing things for me. It's like, as when I was a tutor, a theatre tutor, that I would say something about, you know, metamorphosis or whatever I was teaching it, maybe as a module or something, and the students who were 17 would see it in a completely different way, and I was going, oh, fantastic, and I'd encourage them to throw it all in there, you know. And it's an amazing thing that every new generation sees, you know, if work has anything to say, always will do that, won't they? You know, I mean, that wonderful photograph of the boots and the you know, that you've just shown, Jill. It could be a cover of now. I mean, it's just amazing, isn't it? It is a timeless and a very, very powerful photo, really, even though we haven't seen it in movement. I'd love to see the piece, but so the link, if the link comes out, I'll have a look at that, yeah.
Unfortunately, it works bad ways as well, because today I heard how the Rolling Stones tried to sue Trump when he tried to use "You Can't Always Get What You Want to" as his.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, just, you know, you can't always be sure what somebody else is going to do with what you produce.
I know. God, I know. That's true. No, well, we're not, you know, I suppose, yeah, that is a worry, yeah. That is a worry. What can you say to that? Oh, there have been so many political uses of art, haven't there, over the centuries, really.
The mad thing about the Tate bricks was that in 1972, when that was bought for, I think it was £8,000, the big outcry was all about the finance, about the money the Tate Gallery had wasted on it. And now that's about 10 million quid. You know, so just from a purely investment point of view, you know, they were ahead of the curve and could see the potential in that, you know, superb work.
Have you got any, Graham?
Now I've got a Carl Andre, but I'm working on it. I've got a DIY, but I could do a DIY version.
I thought you were going to produce a brick for a moment.
Leave it with me, Roger. Leave it with me.
He's obsessed with brick. Every brick we ever see going out to walk or wherever, he'll go, oh, look at that brick. Every single brick for Ed is like a sort of miracle. It's
Great.
People
really sorry,
don't know.
I think we have to move on, otherwise we won't be able to give enough justice to the last two speakers. So apologies to cut nice chat short. I just quickly also wanted to say, Jill, I really, really enjoyed those two photos/video. I'm absolutely fascinated how she did the video to actually consider her weight, that it's exactly aligned to the horizon. I love what you said about and I think it fits really well with the Lockdown Still Lifes group about just actually seeing the ordinary slightly different and put so much meaning into that, like a pair of shoes, a pavement, or just a horizon. So yeah, thank you very, very much for you know, showing us this. And kind of, again, as everybody else said, it always provides a whole new dimension and a new insight, and I love that. And it's so nice to hear all your different views, and I want to give you each enough time. So now, Lisa, 2015, so we're really entering like our very recent past. So over to you.
Hey. I'm not going to even try and screen share. So I hope you can see it actually. It's got
yep.
Yep. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I did put it on to the Still Life group, so
Yes,
I'm going to talk about this piece of work. It's an A2 size drawing with, it's actually got, I did refer to it as a drawing on the Still Life group, but it's actually got collage elements, which are these, the flowers are actually collaged on, and then he's worked into it around the flowers. I really liked what Jill said about the dancing grid in relation to Marianne's piece that she put on last week. The little tiny, because there's lots of little sort of dancing grids around. So this is a piece of work by one of our learners, ex-learners at HMP Humber. It was one of around probably 5, probably to even 700 pieces of work that he created while he was with us. The piece of work created a massive change in the mindsets of the learner's way of coping with his incarceration during his prison sentence. The change that I'm interested in is the change which often occurs in the mental health state of our learners, of some of our learners, not all, but quite a high number of our learners, from when they first arrive in the art studio to when they eventually leave and rejoin the world outside. During which time they discover, sometimes for the first time, then jump head first into, some of the learners have never attended school. They've come from lots of different community backgrounds, and you know, maybe have never even studied art, never picked up a pencil, never really been drawing when they were younger. You know, it's hard to imagine that a child would not ever sort of do drawings, but you know, we have come across lads that really haven't been given any sort of opportunity to do anything like that within, or at least encouraged to do so. So during which time they discover, you know, the all-encompassing creative process of making artwork, creating a new visual object, drawing, collage or print for the world. We were able to see really quickly with this learner, all the tutors in Graph Studio, the self-discovery in this learner, this self-esteem, and ultimately quite dramatically, sometimes in some learners, a kind of self-discovery while they're in the art room and they're creating, start getting into the creative process. They're in 5 days a week with us, full-time art course, so they literally you know, spend 6 hours a day in the art room and then go back to their pads, which they call pads, their cells, and then carry on creating artwork, bringing it in the next day, usually, you know, quite often all weekend, and then bring us back in on a Monday what they've been making and working on. I've been teaching there for 18 years, and Graham, who's on the Zoom call as well, he did a 20-year stretch teaching, taught alongside him for 20 years, and this was one of our prolific learners that we both taught for, you know, quite a number of years. We knew him for in there. Creating this artwork on a daily basis became his primary coping mechanism and aided a balance in his mental health, which previous to joining the art studio and starting to draw had been deteriorating rapidly. When he first joined us, he never really put pencil to paper, other than to what he referred to as to doodle. So what we did is we looked at what he was doing on quite a small scale and found it really quite fascinating. They were so sort of intricate, but really kind of considered and sort of really detailed. So we just allowed him to continue, sort of nurtured him, sort of, you know, encouraged him to let his imagination run wild, and gradually just carried on sort of expanding his paper size until he started, he was using A2 paper in the end, and most of his sort of around 500 to 700 drawings were done on A2. He progressed through our City and Guilds qualifications, level 1 and 2. gaining distinction after distinction. He has he's been included in many of our Graph Studio exhibitions, showing at the Royal Festival Hall as part of the Koestler Art in Prison Award, gaining many gold and platinum awards every year collectively. He showed at the Broderick Gallery, at the Hull School of Art Design. He's shown at Artlink Gallery about 2 or 3 different exhibitions. He's shown his work is also part of the British Council collection, and was shown in the British Pavilion in the 2013 Venice Biennale, under which, under the umbrella of Jeremy Deller, who was representing Britain at the time, he came into the workshop in 2013 to the prison on a period of a few weeks. So it was every Thursday for a few weeks he came and he ran drawing workshops with our learners, and this learner was part of that. Who a lot of the so he then showed his work in the Venice Biennale. So I'm just going to put this down for a second. And then in 2013, the most amazing thing happened, and Art Monthly appeared with our learners' work on the front, which is incredible, which was under Jeremy Deller's umbrella of his work for the British Pavilion. So you can imagine the amazement and joy of seeing his. I mean, I would love to be on the front of Art Monthly. So the learner, you know, was absolutely ecstatic about this. And this was a piece of work he created called 50 Shades of Blair, which we have shown in a couple of different formats in different galleries. And this was Graham was running this graph, you know, involved in trying to get this graph magazine up and running, and we used some of Eddie's artwork on the front cover. And then we found one more, a picture which is another one of his drawings, which is very kind of, it has loads of the little sort of the kind of dancing grids. Well, it's kind of one big dancing grid sort of merging, and then over here is a hand with the fingers crossed, which was the piece was called Parole. So that was his fingers crossed, waiting for his the result of his parole hearing. And I think that's about it, actually. That's
Fantastic.
what I've got to show you. Graham can put some more input in this. I think I probably missed something out, but
Can I ask you, Lisa?
yeah,
On the first piece of work you showed me,
yeah.
is there a little section of Jailhouse Rock in there? I'm talking from where I'm looking at it, between the third and fourth flower. It just looks like the Jailhouse Rock sequence from the film.
It does, yeah.
It's quite interesting.
Just accidental.
Oh, you mean underneath?
Yeah.
Underneath,
Oh, the squares.
yeah, just little figures.
Silhouette figures, the figures.
Yeah. Wow. It does.
I'm not noticed.
I knew it reminded me of something, right? I knew it.
Yeah.
No, that's a drawing, or that's your psychedelic imagination. I'm not sure which it is. But it's very good, that.
Yeah, I remember. Yes.
That's great.
I think-
That's really interesting.
Also, it looks a bit like those illustrations, like figures falling through, you know, a kind of grid. There's another grid. Isn't it? Interesting.
He was just the classic example, really, of the outsider artist.
Yeah.
You know, he turned up quite a sad individual, really, not much going for him, you know, a bit of a bad luck character, just, you know, not very popular amongst his peers, struggling with the system. All of a sudden, like Lisa said, we didn't do anything, you know, we didn't teach him, really. We just enabled him. We just gave him like you say, a range of pencils. We could see he was doing interesting imaginative drawings. We just gave him bigger paper, proper paper. We gave him a range of pencils. That's all we did, was enabled him to flourish. And that's exactly what he did. He was the most prolific artist we've ever had, with the most creative mind. For us to teach him how to draw properly would have just been a killer. You know, we just had to enable him to do what he could do best. And he became an extraordinary individual.
Graham, I think what you just said, like, really important. You let it happen. Like, sometimes that's the best teaching, or the best intervention, is just to let it happen. Yeah. And sometimes when you hear about, I don't know, education things, or people saying they've got to do this and they've got to do that and we've got to get that done by tomorrow, sometimes the best thing is just to let things happen. And so I wouldn't say, oh, we just let him do it. I'd say that was...
No, it was enabling. It was enabling him to flourish, really. So that was the right thing to do for him. Yeah, yeah. Not for everybody, but for a lot of people, that is the right thing. Especially with our lads that we had. I mean, it's great. It follows on really nicely, Lisa, from David and Roger's thing about this. Eddie was a product of psychedelia, really, and rock music. He loved all that shit. And so, you know, he just loved making work about, you know, and so... But the thing with him is, not only was his work brilliant, his status in the room grew. His self-confidence was transformed, really. He became somebody that people respected. Everybody thought he was a little wanker, you know, to be honest, when he first came in. Nobody would give him nobody would just used to spit at him, basically. But by the end, when he left, he was a high-status individual. And the best day of my career I can ever remember was when we was in the Venice Biennale, and the Guardian, I'd been tipped off by Jeremy that the Guardian were running a double-page spread of our students' work in the Guardian. So I went out and bought all our 10 lads who were in the show, all a copy of the Guardian. And I took it in, I gave them out, I said, right, check them out. And they all opened up and saw their work in the centre page. I don't know if you've got that, Lisa. I think I might have a spare copy, but for them to open the work and see their work in the middle page of the Guardian, one lad said to me, I can't wait to show my mum this. It's the first time I've been in the paper for something good. You know, and what a buzz to see these big hard criminals, almost with tears in their eyes, couldn't believe it. It was like a surreal moment. None of us could believe it. Really. To see their work on a full double page called The Spread was just fucking brilliant. You know, it was just the best thing you could ever imagine as a teacher, and a very fond memory. So to go from where we were, at the arse end of the art world, to the very top of the Venice Biennale, celebrated in all the magazines, was something else. You know, and that was just a brilliant experience.
After the workshops that Jeremy Deller did, interesting thing happened. We had to get all of the drawings that the learners had done cleared by security at the prison before they could leave site. So I took him down to security, and it was like he'd got like an hour to get we had to get him back to Brough to get his train. We took him down to security with this big portfolio, and he took around about 100 drawings away. We'd created our learners over the period of the few weeks that he'd been in. And a really interesting thing, the head of security had to look through all of the drawings and be happy, even though he had no art background, but he had to be happy that they were okay to leave and go to the Venice Biennale. So he was looking through, and we were both stood there, and he was going through them, and that one of them he wasn't quite sure about. And so he sort of made a separate pile. Anyway, then he said, no, I'm sorry, those can't go, but those can. And there was a big shredder, and he literally started shredding in front of Jeremy Deller the work that he said couldn't go. And Jeremy's face was amazing. And then he came out, and we walked down the corridor, and he said, well, that is something that is the height, like the most extreme form of art criticism, to actually shred the work.
Yeah. Tell him to refuse it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but that's just how things, that's how things work, and that's how, that's the only way he could get the rest out, was to allow them to shred that bit.
Burning up books, isn't it? Burn books is the same attitude, isn't it?
Weirdly, I can actually recall that it used to be quite a thing for your teachers to screw up your work and say that it's rubbish
Hmm.
and chuck it in the
Mm.
shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know whether anybody else, well, is old enough to remember, but I do remember there being, you know, education. I slightly disagree, Graham, when you said it only worked for him. I think that kind of enabling thing is something that is insufficiently used in education.
No, we used it for all our lads because of their, when they come to us, they have no art knowledge. You know, so it's
I worked in nursery, and with very little children, it's very easy to discourage them before they've even started. And when you make them work to rote as opposed to develop their own ability, same thing.
Yeah.
And it makes me cross.
No, I don't know if you misunderstood me. I didn't mean that there's, you know, it's something we do with all of them really, because they come in with a very low level of understanding and exposure to contemporary art. You know, we just let them go with it, and they kind of almost teach each other in a way.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very strange dynamic that we created, where it became like a melting pot of just kind of an ideas kind of forum, you know, platform really, and it was very, you couldn't do it anywhere else or with any other. It was just that particular cohort of adventurous individuals that have done crazy things in their life. You know, were very experimental, very, you know, kind of did all like being exposed to drugs and other things and other issues in dysfunctional backgrounds. But for somehow art gave them a safety net or a kind of structure which was extraordinarily transformative. And they felt a little bit of freedom. They all experienced a level of freedom in the art room. You know, freedom of expression. Nobody was going to tell them what to do or what, you know, how, when to do it or how to do it. They had they regained their individuality, which was everything. You know, for any artist, it's about expressing your individuality, and that's what we allowed them all to do, and that's what Lisa's still doing now. And it's just
They just had a different sort of art training and art school experience, in my view. It's just random, isn't it? It's there for the grace of God of all of us. I mean, you think quite often outside the box as a creative sort of person, I think. So they just were unlucky to fall through the chances that maybe people like us sitting here sharing our stuff got, you know, and that's why it's so fantastic to hear. I worked in prisons as well, but I worked, of course, in drama, so I've got some fantastic stories to share, but another time. But it was equally as fantastic to see, to give people the chance to be heard, really. And I think that's what it's all about, isn't it? Someone saying, it's interesting, that's good, just keep going, you know, that's what it is, enabling, isn't it? That's all it is. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Dead right.
Thank you, Lisa. Again, an amazing
Great.
story. Brilliant.
Really
I can't get over that shredding. I think that'll just be one of those things that kind of will haunt me forever. And I kind of see also Banksy at the same time. You know, there is something around shredding now that's become, you know, an art form in itself. So the art critic, as I don't know, there's something.
It's just that thing that he did it in front of Jeremy. He did it in front of Jeremy Teller. He was like horrified.
I know that needs to be recorded in art history almost. It feels like a seminal moment, you know. I wonder whether he's talked about that experience somewhere. But anyway, I don't want to kind of take away from Caroline's time. I'm really very excited, you know, to welcome Caroline to this group and to hear about, you know, the area that you find inspiring and that you feel, you know, kind of initiated change in some shape or form. So over to you, Caroline.
Yes, hi again. Right, hello. As a drama person, as a theatre person, I went to art school, but I suppose what I found when I was at art school, that I had the terror quite early on of not knowing what I wanted to say, even though I had some skills. So this is really about the change in me when I came across the work and the world of the work I'm about to explain to you, or you'll know about it. It's hardly unknown. But it was a really important time, because I must have been probably the foundation course or maybe first year at the most at art school. And I remember we were asked to look at, do essays. You had to do essays, didn't you, every term on something that you cared about. And initially I'd gone to Wimbledon Art School on foundation course because I thought I might do theatre set design, because I was quite a good designer at that stage, you know, 18, 19. I loved design. I loved the whole idea of theatre, etc. But it soon became apparent to me that as somebody who couldn't measure correctly, even in any way accurately of any sort, and completely impractical, that theatre studies was not going to, theatre set design was not going to be for me. But through my interest in theatre, the world of theatre, because I had already enjoyed performing, which I've also done most of my life, I realised that there's no such thing really as originality, and you shouldn't be scared of it. You shouldn't be scared that you haven't anything to say, in a way. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that I want to talk about collaboration, because for me, I realised that I was never going to be an artist where I would create something on its own, in my own space, for myself, or not for myself, but on my own. I needed creativity which was going to be collaborative. So I remember reading, and I was triggered to do this tonight because I watched, last week, I watched The White Crow, which was on BBC 4, I think, about Nureyev. It's a recent film done by Ralph Fiennes, I think, who directed it and also was in it. And he, The White Crow is about Nureyev, Nureyev's defection in 1961 from Russia, Rudolf Nureyev. Now, I saw Nureyev as a child. My grandma took me to Sadler's Wells. I was born down in London, so I'm originally a Londoner. So I went to Sadler's Wells and I saw Nureyev playing, I think it was Romeo and Juliet with Margot Fonteyn. But my grandmother said to me, don't ever forget this, Caroline. Don't ever forget you've seen Nureyev at playing this role. And I haven't. And when I saw this film last week, it made me think of the amazing experience I had in the theatre at that time, and why I then started to, all my life, having then been obsessed with Russian art, dancers, theatre, etc. I mean, I was in Drury Lane. It must have been Sadler's Wells, I think. I was probably about 10. And the whole experience of the theatre, the red velvet seats, the lights, the gold, the experience of the social interaction, the audience. And that's what I want to talk about as well tonight, because I think this particular work that appeared through amazing timeline, which of course, while I was investigating as a 19 or 20-year-old art student, I realized that there was no such thing as art that just arrives, you know, like an alien force from somewhere. You can debate that later, because I know there are some artists that sometimes you might think, my God, where did they come from? But actually, this was such an amazing piece of work that came through so many subtle things. But the audience reception for it on the night, and ever since, really, it's been a piece of work that has been elaborated on, evolved, developed, and it's something which has stayed in the audience's receptive sort of hearts, I think, forever. And it is the Rite of Spring from 1913, in May 1913, that was put on in Paris when the Ballet Russe was on tour, doing their latest incredible sort of dance pieces. I'm not a dancer, I just love movement and I love dance, but I have done, you know, dance to some extent in musicals and things like that, but was never a trained dancer. But I think my memories of going to the theatre and seeing dance then have stayed with me forever, because I saw, as I say, one of the best dancers, you know, at the time in the world, and it was mesmerizing. Now, the Russian links, of course, go to Nureyev. My grandma also said to me, by the way, I've seen Pavlova. She told me that she'd seen Pavlova doing The Dying Swan, which, of course, is one of the seminal works in dance, movement, theatre ever. So there's a sort of 6 degrees of separation here, you know, a bit like, who's that famous actor, Kevin Bacon. I feel if I could just touch, you know, I went Nureyev, my grandma, Pavlova, you know, I almost could be there in that theatre in Paris in 1913. Now, what happened was, it's very difficult to share a performance work with you, and I'm so rubbish at technology. If I had my whiteboard and I was working, you know, in my studio at work, when I was working, I would be able to just click onto it. I can't do it because I'm useless at this stuff. But I wanted to show you, I want to try and play you the music. So most of you will know, I hope that some of you have heard the Rite of Spring. It is really the most incredible music. It was really a, I'm trying to put it on now, if you can maybe hear some of it. Let me try, see if I can just put on my phone. Here we go. It started, there were 4 people who put this piece of work on. Diaghilev was the sort of impresario, the Svengali of the whole of the Barry Rus, and he had the most incredible sway over everything that happened. In the Rite of Spring, it was it had followed on from a few ballets that were really shifting and changing the art of movement on stage, and audiences were beginning to sort of go, whoa, what's happening here? And what I liked about something earlier someone said is that well, you know, the image of the boots and the walking, that is so absolutely every day. Now what changed in this piece of work was that the movements on stage became so much more, in a sense, normal, but stylized as well. They went away from, you know, that cold, restricted, extremely restrained ballet technique to extraordinary, passionate and wild stuff. It's a sort of night where you wish you'd been there. You know, it's like maybe we all wish we'd been to see, say, maybe we're there when the, you know, the Sex Pistols were on that riverboat and Malcolm McLaren was the Svengali behind that night. There's moments in the theatre or in live performance which for me makes it, you know, which is the be all and end all for me in the arts, is that thing, oh God, how amazing that must have been to have been in that audience. When the piece started, my phone isn't working. A classic, isn't it? Let me see if it will. I've done it all day, and of course, you know, I was thinking it would come on, but it hasn't come on. Let's see if it can. I'm trying to get the music. Here we are. Here we are. The music started, and the orchestra just felt like they were just sort of tuning up. You know, when you hear tuning up, if you're going to see a concert or a classical piece, you go, oh, I actually really love that. I love hearing the audience tuning up when you're live there and you're in that social, everybody's in the same place, and you go, what's going on here? The buzz must have been so amazing. So I want you to take you back in a way to sitting in maybe the stalls, or maybe you were up in, you know, in the bits above, balconies, and maybe even in the box. Because the sort of people who went were people who were in the know, they were quite wealthy, they were the arty people who went to this Paris opening night. They were either bohemians, you know, maybe you'd be dressed in, you know, some sort of flash sort of silk stuff, or you'd be people with, you know, tiaras and bejeweled, you know, with a full sort of Edwardian corsets on. So very different sort of audiences. There was two very different distinct types of the audience. This is the start of it. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear it?
Yep. Yep.
Hope so. And the music started, and they just had, before the Rite of Spring actually came on, they just had a version of Les Sylphides, which was Chopin music, which was, you know, pretty traditional, and it's very beautiful, and the dancers were very elegant, and everybody looks very restrained and perfect. And then this piece came on after the interval, and it absolutely, you know, there are lots of myths about it, but apparently the audience went completely, absolutely apeshit, you know. And there are some fantastic documentaries all over YouTube. You can look at it forever. And listen to this. This is incredible. This is the start of the piece. This is not tuning. This is the key moment when the clarinet comes in, really strange, sort of high notes. And people were going, what is this? What's going on? And then they had this amazing imagery. Behind it, they had this. I'll try and show you a picture. Here we are. This is the sort of image you would have backstage. The setting there. The setting was by a guy called Nicholas Roerich. He was a major painter, a Russian painter. So all the people involved in this piece were, and listen to this. This music was Stravinsky. People, they knew he was a, you know, incredible young, trendy, amazing new musician. Can you imagine being in this audience? And suddenly hearing this is 1913, before the First World War. So you're sitting there and you're thinking, what is this? It must have been amazing. And when you see it now, even they try to reconstruct as much as they can of it. It's very hard because it's way before anybody did proper recordings movement-wise. The music was so extraordinary that people were very quickly apparently shouting, throwing things, and the people in the balconies were saying, shh, be quiet, and the Bohemians downstairs were saying, be quiet. So I just think, I'll stop that music now. You know, it was the most incredible night to have been there. The actual piece itself was, the content was about, was a sort of pagan ritual about our links to the earth and all sorts of things like that, sacrifices. The dance itself was ugly. The dancers hated it, absolutely hated it. And when Nijinsky, the amazing young ballet dancer who had choreographed it, showed it to them, they almost refused to play it, because to dance it, because they said, you know, this is not what dance is, because the feet were turned in, people were ugly. We're so used to seeing choreography now and dance now, modern dance of all genres, that we don't think of it as particularly strange when people do strange. Because I'm a theatre person, I tend to want to demonstrate a lot of stuff. Anyway, it must have been the most amazing piece. I've got some pictures here of photographs of the original images. This is an original photograph taken of the male dancers. You can see how they're turning their, obviously it's a still, but they're in poses. They're not dancing in a sort of look at me how beautiful I look, and isn't my body wonderful. It's about the content of the piece, which was ritualistic and paganistic and quite extraordinary. This is a picture of the adolescents. That's another photograph of, and to think that's been a coloured picture there. Sorry about my absolute rubbish technology. This is Diaghilev, the man himself who was the amazing impresario who ran the Ballet Russe. He looks quite a tough there, doesn't he? But I was reading around so much of it in the last few days. I really enjoyed doing this again. Apparently he was obsessed with money, of course, and he looked as if he was extremely wealthy. He lived a very wealthy life in his world of the demi-monde, they call them. But actually, apparently he only had one suit, one coat and one top hat, and everything underneath was completely threadbare. He had absolutely no money himself. He just lived this sort of extraordinarily bohemian life. And this is a wonderful painting of him. I love this painting of him because, look, he's got that lovely white shock of hair there. He just looks like some sort of crazy punk, crazy wonderful guy. I just think all the people involved in this world, this world of when it all came together at once, it's quite an incredible piece of work. I can't really show it to you now because time's running out, I know, but also my technology is weak. So what I'd like you to do is to maybe go online and have a look at some of the incredible developments that this piece sort of engendered, because 108 years later, and this is what made me so, I was really broken up yesterday when I looked at it and found it online. There's an amazing piece by Pina Bausch's company. Pina Bausch is one of the most highly regarded contemporary dance companies in the whole world. She died actually a good couple of years ago, but of course her legacy is still going on. And they were about to, in June, they were about to open a new incredible version in Senegal with African dancers that they got from all over. And of course COVID hit, so they've had to cancel the whole tour. But there is the most beautiful Sadler as Wells film of dancing on the beach, where they literally rushed down to the beach because they knew it was the dress rehearsal, and then it was told it was cancelled because of COVID. So they rushed down to the beach and they filmed it on the beach, and it is absolutely breathtaking. Pina Bausch's version of it is, in terms of the physicality, as near as it can be, but of course it's a completely new way of showing the external from the internal stuff. And there are some fantastic interviews from the dancers and the choreographer and the people who have put it together, talking about how it was literally transforming for them, especially at this time of COVID, that they felt it was about the earth, the link with the earth, the link with our our violence to the earth and our violence to each other, and how we've got to get back to something else. So I thought, when I didn't realise when I started to do this piece that it was going to matter so much to me about now, how there are no audiences and we can't receive much. We can do this. This is better than nothing. But for me, I'm absolutely bereft because I can't physically sense what matters to me, which is being in a room together with people, experiencing it centrally. And that's why I thought it was the most amazing piece of work to share, because it has developed and it's still there, even though the critics hated it, and it went, I can tell you so much more about it, but it went off for years because Diaghilev himself hated the work after a while because Nijinsky, his lover at the time, had gone off and got married. There's just so many fantastic stories about it, but it was a revolutionary piece of theatre. And it mattered to me because it made me realise that all theatre is connected, all arts are connected. They're not all separate. And I felt okay about that in the end, that I was a mixture of everything. Anyway, there you go.
Oh, wonderful. Caroline, I just quickly Googled and I found a brief excerpt of that Dancing at Dusk, Pina Bausch.
Oh, good.
Do you want me to share it quickly? Shall we all watch it together?
Yes,
you can.
please.
Sorry?
That would be lovely.
Yeah, because I think that would be...
Probably make me cry, but yeah.
It's been wonderful. So, and I'm really, yeah, beautiful. Does anybody else, before I play, maybe we can just play it at the end? You know, I don't want to take the moment away. So I think it's beautiful. I love that period as well. I've heard of Rites of Spring, Diaghilev and all of them. And it's nice as well. I wonder why they translated it to Rites of Spring, because in French it means the sacred of spring, which I think has almost even more significance in a way. I'm quite intrigued by that. I don't know whether you've seen.
Yeah.
For me as well, the costumes were amazing.
Well, I could go on forever, you know. I could go on forever.
All that in Petrushka and things like that changed in the way dance, which goes on and on and on. But thank you.
The timeline for me comes from, well, you know, you've got, as I said, on that particular night in 1930, you know, they had Les Sylphides, which was quite a modern-ish version of ballet. But then to have the interval and then to come up to that, you know, can you imagine being there? It's just the most, I just so wish I'd been there. It must have been amazing, you know. There was, I mean, Picasso was there, Debussy was there, Ravel was there. Everybody was there in that theatre that night. I mean, you know, we can all say it may have been elite. It probably was, because it was a highly, you wouldn't have been poor going to that theatre that night. You know, you've had to have had, you know, the knowledge, a bit like going to a massive opening at the, I don't know, you know, Tate or...
You have to have a lot of courage. You'd have to have a lot of courage, which is what this art of change thing is about. People having courage to do something different.
But it has changed dance forever, really. That sort of work did, because people didn't do ugly movements before. And that's the same for drama too. It was a sort of, you know, you can make connections with things that happened at the time in drama, and that's what I like.
And yet when Fosse did all that angular dancing, the same kind of thing was still going on, a bit of resistance to people not being lyrical and, you know, that angular. Like
I said about the people still say, oh, but you know, that's not nice, you know, that's not real ballet, is it? You go, what? You know, seriously, this is what has created the dance as we know, contemporary dance as we know it now, you know, whether you love it or not. But there's just so many different types of dance that were blasted out. The fact it was 1913 to me is really interesting, because of course it was before the world literally blew up in our faces in 1914, and then of course we had the Russian Revolution, because it was Russia. What an incredible time, you know, for all that to have suddenly, they were like desperate to, it was desperate to, something had to burst, didn't it, for me? It's amazing.
Caroline, I was really lucky enough to have seen Pina Bausch perform at the Lead Mill in Sheffield with her dance company in 1991. It was when I first started my degree, and it was absolutely incredible. So she must have been around sort of 50 sort of late
Yeah.
40s. And
Yeah.
she was absolutely really incredible. And it was just, like you said, a crossover of performance art. I mean, it was,
Yeah.
you know, a theatre of dance, but it was more sort of, at that time in Sheffield, there was the Sheffield Media Show, and there was Hull time-based arts going on, and then
Yeah.
Sheffield Media Show, and there was loads of performance and live art stuff going on, and that just fitted Pina Bausch's performances, just sort of, you know, they were really kind of, it was fine art, really, just watching.
It was. It is.
And the
It is.
costumes
There are so.
were incredible.
Oh, well, the thing is, I mean, I find that when I was doing, you know, working on looking at this, which took me 2 days, I've just loved it actually going there again, being all these places, because I so miss sharing all this stuff with students and stuff, you know. But and it's been lovely. I've done you a sort of module, whatever, in about, very badly, in about half an hour. I mean, that would probably take you all term to break it into its elements, you know, as to why and all that. But I just thought that Pina Bausch's work was probably the most nearest to for integrity wise, because there's been a lot of reconstructions of it, and they've tried to get so many fantastic choreographers and dancers over the years have done it. But when I was looking at all the different versions I thought I might talk about, that one was the one especially when I saw it was only this last year, you know, and there it's been stopped, you know, because of COVID. It broke my heart, really. I literally was crying listening to the dancers talking about it on that film, especially in the rehearsal. There's a rehearsal film, and then there's a short film, just says moments on the beach, dancing at dusk. But the dancers talking about doing it in that dusk, it's just, it makes your heart break, really. You think of what we're missing at the moment, and what dancers are missing, and what all performers are missing, you know, and us as audience, because the audience is what's kept that piece alive. The critics said it was, you know, rubbish. Who cares about the critics? In the end, it's audiences, isn't it? Same for art. I mean, fine art, you know, paintings, anything.
If you'd heard Roger at the beginning that you missed, that was exactly what happened at the end of the Liechtenstein. That was
really? Oh, amazing! Isn't that great? I wish
the same, you know, critics saying, "Oh God, you know, what's going on here? This is rubbish." How many times?
Sorry, go on.
No, just saying, how many times does that happen?
Oh,
it's
always best to look at back,
isn't it? It's
a sign of a piece of work.
I think it's a sign of a threshold. It always happens, isn't it, when kind of something moves over into a different time and into a different age. And it's that friction, and it's lovely. I mean, if we look back, and we will look back at this 2-part series, you know, the moments we've picked out in art history, you know, and it's been really lovely, you know, the differences, but there is that similarity, isn't it, of a friction, of a moment in time, of resistance, of, you know, and hunger for something new, and you know, the moment when you look back, it kind of seems clear that that's a clear moment, but, you know, I wonder whether at that moment people were aware, you know, how significant that piece was, because it's, as you said, you know, they were shocked, they were surprised, they didn't know how to handle it. And often it's only when you reflect on it that you realize, wow, okay, this is just, I have to change my mindset. I have to change the way I look at it. I wonder what Picasso and all of those, you know, creative people actually made of the moment. You know, did they embrace it immediately? Did they have a bit of reluctance? Did they have to kind of, how was it for them? You know, it's fascinating. It's always clear cut when you look back, isn't it?
There are very few. As far as obviously I haven't gone into it in immense depth, but there's not that many that I could find, because I wanted to, any witness statements, as it were, from people who were there. You know, your ordinary audience. None of them were ordinary. They were all, of course, probably, you know, the arty set and the bohemian set and the rich, of course. But, you know, nobody thought at the time to record their views of it, as far as I know. I suspect, should you want to research further, you know, you get more like anything. But, I know that, of course, theatre and in a sense, elitist work like this, because it was for the rich, because it was that sort of work, unfortunately, did attract and does attract artists, and always has, you know. So now, I mean, Hockney's done opera, hasn't he? And, you know, that was just top of my head. Of course, Picasso, after that, did quite a lot of work. Matisse worked with Diaghilev.
Didn't Picasso do Ballyruth sets, the tapestry thing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Picasso did the Ballyruth.
You name the artists, they were queuing up to work with them, you know, in the 20s. So it's just incredible, really. I mean, this sort of thing is happening now, of course, but you know, everything is connected. Everything's connected. I think that's my biggest word, really. That when I realised that it didn't matter that I knew that I could work with collaborators. I was a collaborator, and in fact, Diaghilev was known as a mentor of a creator of creators. That's what he was described as once. I think that's really nice. A creator of creators.
I think that's it, Caroline.
And he.
Sorry, I was
sorry,
looking through an artist's eye, what you're talking about. I guess from Picasso's point of view, all the artists really, you'd be looking at it like quite enviously, really, because you know you work as an artist, you tend to work on your own, whereas you know you're talking about a synergy of creativity with different skill sets. Yep. And you know, I think that went on to influence the Bauhaus, like Oskar Schlemmer and the metaphysical theatre, and then up to with Merce Cunningham and John Cage and Rauschenberg, all working together in that same collaborative theatre. You know, so you know, it can't be anything that attacks all the senses quite as powerfully.
It does.
Like that, really. You know, and so I just look to see it as I'm very envious of that. You know, that whole sector.
Excellent.
It's interesting because we're always envious of each other, aren't we, in a way? Because when I was at art school, I wanted to be a fine artist because I wasn't put in that bracket. So, and I obviously knew I had lived with at that point a fine artist who still happens to be my husband. And and I remember thinking, you know, we're sort of, us decorative types are sort of not quite the same as fine artists. I think there's a really interesting hierarchy in art school work. I'm not sure it's like that these days. And also I remember,
you better be careful there, because you're going into the land of why are there so few female artists?
Yeah. Well, maybe
decorative.
Maybe.
I actually went to art college when they told me as an interview that the only reason they accepted women on the course, I think I was supposed to get up in arms, but I was too intimidated, and they told me at St Martin's, oh, we only take women here to make good wives for our artists.
Bloody. Beyond understanding.
In an interview. That's
I could draw, you see. I am still quite a good drafts person, but I haven't done it enough, really, because I don't tend to find the motivation to want to do it for myself, because I say I'm a collaborator. But I remember they said to me at foundation course, well, you know, you're very good, you know, you can draw well. Have you thought of doing, and this will make you laugh, Julia knows me well enough to know this is against myself, but they said, well, have you thought of doing textiles embroidery? Which I did, and I have never done embroidery since, but I did textiles embroidery at Goldsmiths. But because I knew I couldn't do theatre design, because I wasn't practical, I knew I hadn't got the skills, I wasn't stupid, I knew I hadn't got them. I then somehow made myself into a fine art embroiderer, even though I have never done embroidery since, like you, Julia. But I made massive paintings of big colours with massive figures. In fact, they were very theatrical. So now I realise that looking, you know, you can't believe how you didn't see things at the time. I thought I'd failed because I wasn't an embroiderer, I wasn't a fine artist, but it doesn't matter anymore because I'm everything, you know, I'm everything. And art school made me who I am, you know. I'm so pleased I am. And as a theatre person, I didn't often used to work with people who'd gone to art school. They'd been text trained. So actually what I had was a completely different view of theatre, which was great. And sometimes we you know, in teams it worked brilliantly because I had those other skills as well. So
Caroline, the same thing happened to me. I was told to do textiles when I wanted to do fine art. And I did do textiles because I was told to do it. But I still ended up wanting to do fine art all the time, all the way through. And then I did graphic design as well. But
you know, sorry, do you know what? the exact same thing happened to me. On foundation, they told me,
That's brilliant.
seriously, they told me, because I did do fashion for 2 years, then I went on to foundation, then they said, oh, I think you should specialise in textiles because you did fashion. And I absolutely, I actually started crying.
Yeah, me too.
And the other tutors said,
So
look,
frustrated.
she's really upset. You just let her do what she wants.
Kind of worms, yeah.
I said, I want to be a fine artist. I know I want to be a fine artist. And they did allow me to do that. So I specialised in fine art, but I was very nearly sort of moved away from it as well.
Well, you all know Chloe from me talking about my daughter. She was convinced by her A-level tutors to do costume design, which she went on to do actually at Wimbledon. And it's only long time after trying to work in wardrobe and God knows what else you end up doing that she became a painter. And really, she's a fine artist.
Of course, there's not that many distinctions between. I hope there aren't anymore. I've lost touch with art school training, to be honest. But I do know that even a few years later, I probably would have done performance art and not textile, because I could have, those sort of courses came in literally a few years after I was there, and I remember thinking, oh, that's what I would have loved to have done. But they were so discreet in the 70s. They were so discreet. You did this or this or this.
And they still were, Caroline, when I left college as a tutor.
Yeah.
Well, Julia will say, it was quite demarcated, is that the word?
Yeah.
Between the different disciplines, like we all thought of the synergies, but still, if you were doing that, you weren't doing that, and then you had that time in that space, and it's all apportioned. So it wasn't that easy for people from different disciplines to kind of cross whatever, which is what would be the exciting and interesting thing.
Yeah,
I've got to say, I really loved your presentation, Caroline. I really loved it.
I'm really aware that we've overrun so much, and I don't want to kind of,
sorry, I kept
join us
everybody.
and we don't stick to our time. But what I'm thinking is, because this has been absolutely amazing on so many levels. So thank you, Caroline. But also, I think this discussion that just arose, on the back of what women are being kind of, how they were perceived, how they were kind of classed into certain categories. I think we should pick this up maybe in the next one in some shape or form, and actually really continue this conversation around your individual experiences and how it reflects. And actually looking at the screen, I think, no, there's a majority of women here, but it's nice to kind of maybe, hear the different backgrounds and experiences and our journey into the art world and the obstacles. I don't know, would that be something that, we should pick up again next time? Because I think there's a real rich conversation to be had.
Relates back to where we come from.
Yeah.
That one we did about where we come from.
Yeah.
Maybe if it was more where we come from as adults, because that went way back into our history, didn't it? But
as an artist, and that's what Michelle, she mentioned that a few times, that she was really interested to see where we come from as an artist, but with a view to maybe the dreams and hopes, we had and what we wanted to do and what kind of either helped us along the journey, like tears in Lisa's case, which I love. Or Sarah, you didn't do that, or kind of, that's really different, but you've ended up in the end getting to where you wanted to be. I think, shall we, it's probably going to be a two-parter again, I can sense that already. But maybe if we just do another show and tell around, our journey and the obstacles and how we eventually got there or not. And, shall we?
Sounds good.
Great, excellent, because I'd like to go around the table and hear from all of you in much more detail about that. So
well, I hoped you were going to talk about that surrealist ladder you've got behind you.
Yeah, I can talk about that in detail. It's not what it seems, which it should do. Great. So shall we conclude like that? and we have something to look forward to next week. I'll write something up, a brief description around how we'll talk about our journey.
Are we going to watch the Pinot?
Oh,
I probably, shall I just put it?
Put
Yeah,
it on.
quickly. I really want to see it. Are you with me? Let's do this. It's nice.
I want to show. I've got it somewhere. Hang on.
I've got it
I-
here. If you
Hang on.
bear with me, I think.
There it is. There it is. Yeah.
Can you see it?
Oh my God, it's so exciting to see the dancers in the water. So good.
So beautiful on the beach, and they
Yeah.
are giving their souls to it, honestly. And the way they talk about it, because they know it's the only time they can show it, and they may never show it now because of COVID. So it's just,
Oh,
you know,
God, it's beautiful.
very sad. It's the same music. Obviously, you can't hear the music there.
Okay, you
But
actually
it's
the
beautiful.
music. Oh.
You can all sit, should you be interested. That's the sacrificial scarf. That's the red scarf of the girl that's been chosen as a sacrifice at the end.
Yeah.
I was so intrigued to see the idea of them dancing on sand.
Yes.
That was what was really playing in my mind. What's that going to be like? So.
Fantastic piece. It really is. It's a beautiful piece. Yeah.
Sorry, did you actually hear the sound or not? Oh.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah.
There are lots of documentaries about it, about the
Yeah.
White Spring and the Ballyruth in particular.
A very, very good one with Tilda Swinton's the narrator, and it's called Diaghilev and the Ballyruth. There are so many, though. Honestly, you could sit there all day tomorrow if it's a miserable day. It's beautiful.
That's quite inspiring, Caroline. Thank you.
Excellent. And on that note,
Thank you.
wishing you all a beautiful evening. Enjoy your dinners, and
Thank you.
see you next week. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.